First expectation is just to really experience what homeless do, experience themselves, and probably I think I'll come away with a fair few more thoughts as to how I can probably contribute more back to society. I think that's really why I'm doing this.
I'm worried about, how to go to the toilet, who I'm going to be sleeping next to, is my stuff going to get nicked, and I just think, wow, all those things are things that people face every day of their lives in parks and on the beach and throughout Melbourne, basically.
I think sleeping on a pretty hard, despite the fact that I'm Italian, pretty hard concrete-like surface, I think that's going to be a challenge because we're all used to, well, many of us are used to comfortable beds in warm homes. This will be cold and it'll be challenging, and I think I've been told that it's unlikely that I'll get much sleep, which is probably because I'm out of the comfort zone.
I think the hardest thing will be just being in a place where it's unfamiliar. You're basically with a bunch of strangers, and you're not in an environment where you necessarily feel safe because it's strange. You're not in a room that you can lock. I think you're open to the elements. You're open to danger, you're open to a whole lot of things that normally you're not. And just getting my head around that has been pretty hard, actually.
It's actually 2 pieces of 2 mil cardboard, so it's 4 mils, and it's not that bad, really. For us, it's just one slightly uncomfortable night with a bunch of people, but for other people, it's a lifetime.
My story was I had a little small business, and it was so successful that I was working 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. And as you know yourself, it takes over everything. And soon I'd lost contact with family and friends, and it was all work. So then as I started getting tired and exhausted, it was my doctor actually, he committed me to a psychiatric institution. Every Friday afternoon, there was this rush to get people out of the place. And what you learnt over a 6-week period is that they were all preparing for the weekend rush and the psychosis and the alcohol-related madness that comes along. So a social worker took me mid-afternoon, Friday afternoon, and took me into Footscray and into just an ordinary residential house, and I had a bungalow in the backyard, and the bungalow I was shown which was going to cost me $70 a week. I had to put up $140 cash up front before I even saw the place. When you walk through the door, the first thing you noticed was the grey carpet and the cigarette burns that covered every square inch of it. The walls were painted grey and over-mixed paint, and the ceiling came down from all the edges, curving down, old masonite, and somebody had been stuffing newspaper up in there to keep the wind out. In the centre of the room was a piss-stained mattress. The social worker apologised to me, and I said, no worries, and she left. Well, I left 5 minutes after her. I used another $140 in to go down the road to a notorious place called Western Lodge, which was a catacomb of 100 rooms, which has now thankfully been closed. It was a dumping ground for the mental health authorities and the prison authorities to send people when they were finished with them. Well, I was there for, I think, 3 nights, and on the 3rd night, a figure came through the door, and it was in a uniform. He said, "It's all right, mate, we're taking him away." Yeah? I said, "Don't worry about it." I didn't actually understand what had happened. I was so exhausted. And what I did is I went straight back to sleep. In that morning, I went to the reception area and said, well, what was it all about? And as it turned out, the guy next to me was having a psychotic attack, and he was banging on my door and on the wall saying he's going to stab me to death in the morning. I had one small truck left after, things had been breaking down for me for a number of months, of course. So I'd lost my accommodation in the 6 weeks period that I was in the hospital. And I had one truck with a canvas cover on it, and it was at this time of the year, and it was as cold as it is tonight. And I slept in that for 6 weeks until I became totally exhausted, living out of the truck stops, having a shower in the back of them. Then a friend, or a so-called friend, actually let me share a squat in Footscray again, and it lasted for about 5 nights, and I woke up in the middle of the night, and what it turned out, somebody had come in and had taken my wallet and my watch and my mobile phone and anything that was any value, so I was left penniless. I started attending the Osland Community Centre, which is a drop-in centre for homeless and marginalised people, predominantly populated by people who are living in rooming houses across Melbourne. The most important thing there for me was it had a volunteer program, and when being a worker like I've always been, what I needed mostly was to be able to work.
What would you do to change what needs to be changed so that homelessness is not systematised in our community?
One of my solutions is actually getting more Gen X and Gen Y involved, and I actually run events where I get like-minded single people to meet while doing things like cooking for the hungry and homeless. So what I've done is really engage an area of the community that's not really doing a whole lot into something where they're actually making a difference. So I think actually getting people from that demographic is a way forward.
I think bringing it to the attention of the community is a step in the right direction, because I personally wasn't aware of the numbers that have been quoted this evening, and whilst I'm aware of it in a local sense, we know that service clubs and Vinnies and those sorts of organisations are dealing with it, but we don't know enough about it. And I think if it could become a local event, that might be a step in the right direction.
I grew up in a small country town in the northeast, and I've lived in the city now more than I've lived in the country. I still think of myself as a country person. My family laugh at me when I say that, but the thing that strikes me as coming from the country is that there's a social fabric that takes care of people. You know, bushfires are a great example. I think country towns, typically there is a fabric, which means that people don't necessarily fall through the cracks as easily. And the question that always occurs to me living in Melbourne today is it's so easy for people to fall between the cracks. The social fabric that perhaps was there once just seems to be evaporating a little, and I think the idea of getting younger people involved in this is terrific. I was talking to someone the other day who has been heavily involved in Rotary for years. Organisations like that are kind of dying because they can't get young people coming through who actually want to make a sustainable contribution to the community. And I think one of the questions we have to ask from an urban perspective is, how do we get people to build social fabric? How do we get people to actually care about their neighbours or care about the people that are within their own communities that might be falling between the cracks? So I don't have any solutions, but that seems to be the question.
We don't have a program for the homeless, but we do have programs for adult apprentices and young people. And I think my perspective is a feeling of self-worth, and not just handouts, not giving charity. People don't want charity, they want real work. So I think getting them applied and doing apprenticeship schemes, adult apprenticeships, graduation schemes, putting them through TAFE, those sorts of things at all ages, because it's not just a Gen Y and Gen X, this applies to all ages of people and all backgrounds. And so I think those sorts of programs, and all companies in this room and ourselves included, could probably do a lot more in that area.
Apprenticeships, training opportunities, I would very much support that, and find easy ways to give people a routine in their life, find easy ways to give people meaning, find an easy way to make them feel like they're part of a team, and so that they've got a group of people who are relying on them or who want to see them each day or want them to be a part of whatever they're doing.
No, it was tougher. It was particularly sore on the hips. I don't want to sound like a whinger, but I had pretty sore hips and had a cold face all night. Most of the night I pulled the beanie down across my face. I had cold hands, and I didn't shiver for every night, but it was just that uncomfortable awkward, just inconvenience. It was terrible. And so I reckon I shifted from side to side, hip to hip, about 30 times during the night. Someone claimed I was sleeping because they heard me snore, but I don't think I got more than an hour to 2 hours sleep at best. So it was a pretty eye-opening experience. So I've learned a fair bit about what people go through to some degree. I wasn't out in the absolute cold. I was on a concourse. There was no rain, but it was tough work.
It's colder than I thought, more uncomfortable than I thought. So not much sleep, very cold, but a good insight. I'm glad I'm not having to do it every night.
I can tell you the floor doesn't get any softer as it goes through the middle of the night.
Pretty badly. Well, first of all, just kind of looking at my doona on the floor, it was pretty a grim outlook, and I thought, oh, this is going to be pretty tough. And I think last night I felt every single bone in my body, and yeah, I felt like I didn't sleep. So it was pretty hard going.
Really, really difficult. You know, I wouldn't call it a night's sleep. You know, just really hard floor, cold. Not something that I'd want to experience in a hurry again.
Two things, I guess, for me is one, we felt incredibly safe in here and didn't have to worry about that. And just think someone sleeping out on the streets, they don't have that. You know, they've got to worry about their safety as well as just trying to get a night's sleep. So for me, it brought home, it's tough to sleep, but equally, we felt safe in here. They don't have that sort of benefit.
It would be hard if you had to do it every night, and there wasn't really any, you had to adapt to it. Then I think you can see how it would affect your health, even in the sense of just your physical, your bones and your joints. That's what had the biggest effect on me.
Yeah, I expected it to be hard, and it was. The ground is way too hard. I never want to sleep on ground this hard again, and the air is way too cold. So no, it wasn't a lot of fun. I didn't get to bed, and I didn't get to sleep probably till about 2:30, and I was up before 5. So what's that? Less than 2.5 hours. So not flash.
It was pretty tough, and I think if the cold doesn't get you, the pins and needles certainly will. It's pretty eye-opening.
I honestly can say that I felt alone last night, and I don't mean my wife's not by my side. I just mean I felt cold, I felt alone. There is an issue and we need to fix it.